Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nasta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact.
Text 19. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye Cheta eterana vidham stitam satve prasidati.
As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness and he becomes completely happy.
Text 20. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate.
Thus, established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, the man whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association.
Text 21. Vidyate hridaya grantish vidyante sarva samshayaha Kshiyante chasya karmani drishta evatmanishvare.
Thus, the knot in the heart is pierced and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees the self as master.
Text 22. Ato vai kavayo nityam bhaktim paramaya muda vasudeve bhagavati kurvantyatma prasadani.
Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self.
Satvam rajastamaiti prakrite gunaste yukta para purusha ekai hasya dhatte Stityadaye hari virinchi hareti samgya Shreyamsi tatra kalu satvatano vinamsyu.
The transcendental personality of Godhead is indirectly associated with the three modes of material nature, namely passion, goodness, and ignorance, and just for the material world's creation, maintenance, and destruction. He accepts the three qualitative forms of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Of these three, all human beings can derive ultimate benefit from Vishnu, the form of the quality of goodness.
Text 24. Parthiva daruno dhumas tasmad agnistrayi mayaha tamasastu rajastasmat satvam yad brahma darshanam.
Firewood is a transformation of earth, but smoke is better than the raw wood, and fire is still better, for by fire we can derive the benefits of superior knowledge through Vedic sacrifices. Similarly, passion, rajas, is better than ignorance, tamas, but goodness, sattva, is best because by goodness one can come to realize the absolute truth.
Text 25. Bhejire munayo thagre bhagavantam adhokshajam Satvam vishuddham kshemaya kalpante yenutaniha.
Previously, all the great sages rendered service unto the personality of Godhead due to his existence above the three modes of material nature. They worshipped him to become free from material conditions and thus derive the ultimate benefit. Whoever follows such great authorities is also eligible for liberation from the material world.
Text 26. Mumukshavo ghora rupan hitva bhuta pati natha narayana kala shanta bhajanti hanusuyavaha.
Those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious, and they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Lord Vishnu and his plenary portions.
Text 27. Rajastama prakritaya samashila bhajanti vai pitri bhuta prajeshadin shri aishvarya prajepsavaha.
Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance worship the forefathers, others living beings and demigods who are in charge of cosmic activities, for they are urged by desire to be materially benefited with women, wealth, power, and progeny.
Text 28 to 29. Vasudeva paraveda Vasudeva paramakaha Vasudeva parayoga Vasudeva parakriyaha Vasudeva param jnanam Vasudeva param tapaha Vasudeva paro dharmo Vasudeva paragatihi.
In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is the supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life.
Text 30. Sa evedam sasarjagre Bhagavan atma mayaya Sadasadupaya chaso gunamaya guno vibhuhu.
In the beginning of the material creation, the absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy.
Text 31. Taya vilasite shveshu guneshu gunavaniva anta pravishta abhati vijnanena vijrim vitaha.
After creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudeva expands himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always being enlightened in his transcendental position.
Text 32. Yatha hyavahito vani darushveka swayonishu naneva bhati vishvatma bhuteshu cha tatha puman.
The Lord, as Supersoul, pervades all things, just as fire pervades wood, and he appears to be many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second.
Text 33. Aso gunamayer bhave bhuta shukshmendriyatmavihi swanirmiteshu nirvishto bhumte bhuteshu tadgunan.
The Supersoul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by the subtle mind.
And text 34. Bhavayat yesha satvena lokan vai loka bhavanaha Leelavatara nurato deva tiryannaradishu.
Thus, the Lord of the universes maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnation, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you so much for volunteering to help with that. Okay, so as I mentioned, today we will be, instead of focusing on a specific verse, we'll be discussing, well, Lord Ram, basically. So the topic that I'm going to be speaking on is the glories of Lord Ram and his devotees. And I'll be focusing specifically on his devotees, as you'll see. So first of all, I'll just recite the Mangala Charan, and then I will share my presentation on the screen. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I'll share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. So, as I said, the topic today is the glories of Lord Ram and his devotees. So from, obviously, I'm sure we're all, very familiar with Lord Ram and his pastimes and his glories. So I decided for this presentation to choose things which may not be so well known, so that we can maybe all learn something new. So I've got a lot of quotes from one scripture called the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which is written by Sanatan Goswami. So I thought most, not as many people are familiar with this scripture as, for example, Bhagavatam. So I thought I can share maybe something new from there. So I just wanted to start with this prayer from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Chukrosha Narado Modaj Jaya Shri Raghunatha He Jaya Shri Janaki Kanta Jaya Shri Lakshmana Graja. Narada cried out in joy, "Glories to you, Shri Raghunath, to the beloved of Shri Janaki, all glories. Glories to the elder brother of Shri Lakshman." So this is from verse 1:4. Now there's also a bit of explanation which I wanted to give, again from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which basically mentions about Ayodhya in the spiritual world, because obviously we understand, the Dham is there in the spiritual world, but then it also manifests here. So for example, we hear, the Vrindavan here on earth is identical to the Vrindavan in the spiritual world. It's a replica of Goloka Vrindavan. So similarly, we also have Ayodhya, Mathura, and various places in the spiritual world as well. So I just wanted to give this brief explanation of that. So this is from the commentary in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which says that The Vaikuntha kingdom has many confidential areas, including cities like Lord Ramachandra's Ayodhya. Devotees who, while living in the material world, worship the Supreme Lord as residing in some particular abode, go to a similar abode in Vaikuntha, where they continue to worship him with the entourage and paraphernalia that attracted them. The Almighty Personality of Godhead is present in Vaikuntha as Narayan, seated in his excellent palaces on the best of thrones, but to all his surrendered devotees, he displays whatever aspects of himself they love with special affection. The special abodes like Ayodhya that are manifest within Vaikuntha are not separate worlds, but special displays of spiritual variety arranged to expand unlimitedly the Lord's glories and the ecstasy of his devotees. So here basically, it's saying if we are, every devotee has a different nature, a different relationship through which they relate to the Lord. So it's not that in the spiritual world, everyone's constitutional position is a relationship with the Lord in the form of Krishna or Vishnu. It may be specifically Lord Ram. So then if that is their relationship, then as it said here, they'll basically continue that relationship as it was here, and they will continue that in Vaikuntha. So this is all, as it says in the last sentence, this is all the Lord displaying spiritual variety. So as we know, the spiritual world is full of so much variety. So then the Lord to a specific devotee, the Lord appears in that form that is closest to the heart of that devotee. So I think I've got, okay, so just another bit from Brihad Bhagavatamrita. This time it's just a very beautiful description of one devotee who gets darshan of Lord Ram in Vaikuntha. And it was so nice, I just wanted to mention this as well before we get on to the main part of the presentation. So just to give a bit of background for those who are not familiar, Brihad Bhagavatamrita is split into two parts, and they're basically two different pastimes. And this is from the second part, which is basically describing the journey of this devotee called Gopa Kumar, who's like a coward boy in Braj here on earth. And he's basically describing his whole journey. He goes progressively higher through the material world, through all the higher planets, and he describes all the planets. And then he goes to the spiritual world, he goes to Vaikuntha, and eventually he'll go all the way to Goloka Vrindavan, where he will finally reunite with Krishna in the spiritual world. And it's basically describing this journey. And you may have seen one painting which is quite popular, you've probably seen, where Krishna is, he's embracing, he's hugging a coward boy, and then there's other coward boys sort of around on the side. So that is actually a picture of Krishna embracing Gopakumar when he comes back to the spiritual world. So anyway, this is Gopakumar when he's still in Vaikuntha before he goes further to Goloka Vrindavan, and then he eventually sees here Lord Ram. So I just wanted to read this. And basically, Hanuman is kind of guiding him, he's taking around, showing him around this place of Ayodhya. So after traveling a long way, I saw some forest monkeys restlessly jumping here and there, shouting, Ram, Ram. As I proceeded, they gathered around me and tried to grab my flute from my hand. Then I saw some humans who were even more beautiful than the associates of the Lord of Vaikuntha. Those men, in behavior like the best of civilized persons, could not tolerate my bowing down to them and showing other signs of respect. They brought me to the boundary of their city and through the main gate. There before me I saw Bharat with Shatrughna, seated comfortably with Sugriv, Angad, Jambavan and others, and surrounded by many handsome men. Thinking Bharat to be Ramachandra, Lord of the Raghus, I recited prayers addressed to that Lord. But Bharat covered his ears and repeatedly forbade me to continue, saying, I am only a servant. Afraid, I stood motionless with joined palms before Lord Bharat. Hanuman then quickly made me leave that place and enter the inner precincts of the city, where I saw the most amazing sight. The Supreme Lord in his form is the best of human beings. He sat comfortably on a royal throne in the best of palaces, a palace full in all charming attractions. Happy and marked with all the signs of a great personage, he seemed somewhat like Lord Narayan, but certain especially attractive features distinguished him from that Lord. His hand was adorned with a bow. His glances were delightfully modest and humble. Playing the role of a perfect king, he followed all the prescribed rules of religious behavior. I was bewildered by the overflowing ecstasy of his darshan, and I fell down before him as if offering prostrate obeisances. My confusion thus robbed me of the supreme benefit of seeing him. But then, by his mercy, I was able to stand up again and see him clearly. Sri Hanuman left me, called back by his own regular service, and in a single jump went to join his Lord. On the left of the Lord, pleasing him with her service, stood his dear counterpart, Sita, and on his other side, his younger brother, Lakshman. Sri Hanuman sometimes stood in front of the Lord, fanning him with excellent white chamaras and singing his glories. And sometimes, palms joined, he praised the Lord with wonderful prayers of his own composition. At one moment, he carried a white umbrella. At another, he massaged the Lord's lotus feet. And at yet another, he did several kinds of service all at once. Amazingly, he was not in the least fatigued by all this. This is from verses 2:4, 2:51 to 2:61. So I'm sure you can agree it's a very beautiful description. So I just wanted to share that. So now we'll get on to the main part of the presentation. So starting off with the glories of the Lord. So for this, I'm just going to speak briefly on three things that obviously he has unlimited glories, but I just want to focus on three things. And then the bulk of the class will be on the glories of his devotees. And it will become clear soon why I've decided to focus more on his devotees rather than Lord Ram himself. But for now, so first of all, I just wanted to point out one quality of Lord Ram, which is his affection. So in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, again, Hanuman is speaking this verse. And he says, Aho Maha Prabho Bhakta Vatsalya Bharanirjita Karo Shevam Api Sviya Chitta Karshaka Cheshtita. Translation: O Master of all masters, you are conquered by your great affection for your devotees. This is how you attract their hearts. So basically, this is describing the Lord's great affection, where there's this kind of reciprocal relationship between Lord Ram and his devotees, where he has, so the devotees, they're serving him with love, and because of that, obviously the Lord has great affection for them, and due to this great affection, the Lord's heart is conquered, and then he gives his heart completely to his devotees, and he even wants to serve his own devotees. So then through this process, he's attracting the devotee even more and more. And then, so obviously then the devotee's love increases. And then as the devotee's love increases again, the Lord's affection increases even more. So it just continues on and on in this very beautiful relationship. So as I said, I'm just going to focus very briefly on these things. So the second one I wanted to mention is the Lord's compassion. So this is another very famous verse, which was actually covered yesterday by Sheshika Prabhu in his class at the Mana. So the verse is Sakrideva prapanno yas davasmiti chayachite abhayam sarvada tasmai dadam yetad vratam mama. This is was quoted in the CC, Madhya Lila, but it's originally from, spoken by Lord Ram within the Ramayana. So the translation, it is my vow that if one only once seriously surrenders unto me, saying, my dear Lord, from this day I am yours, and prays to me for courage, I shall immediately award courage to that person, and he will always remain safe from that time on. So as Vaisheshika Prabhu did mention in his class yesterday, that this is basically after Vibhishan, he leaves his brother's side, he leaves Ravan in Lanka, and then he comes to approach Lord Ram, and he wants to surrender to Lord Ram. And then, some of the monkey army, some of Lord Ram's advisors, they're suspecting and they're not trusting Vibhishan. But then after hearing various opinions from his advisors, then Lord Ram gives his final decision, and then he recites he speaks this verse. And then after that, he basically goes on to say that not only that, here it says that if anyone only once surrenders to me, then he'll accept them and he'll give them courage. But then after that, he says, even if Ravana himself came before me and surrendered to me, then I would also accept him. I would give him shelter. So this is just really showing the incredible depths of Lord Ram's compassion, that he's given this vow to his devotees. And it is, it's really this quality of the Lord's compassion, his love, his mercy, which really, it really sort of conquers and attracts the hearts of the devotees. For example, we hear, just to give another example from the Bhagavatam, we have the example of Shukadev Goswami, who was, as soon as he came out of the womb, he was already fixed in the perfection of impersonal liberation. He was fully liberated at that point. He had no material desires. He was self-satisfied. And then he immediately left home as soon as he came out of the womb. And then, then Vyasadeva had to bring him back by sending his servants to go after him in the forest, and they recited 2 verses describing the Lord. And when he heard this, even though he was already liberated, he heard these 2 verses, and he was completely attracted by the Lord, and he came back to hear the Bhagavatam, so that obviously eventually he could recite the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And first of all, he was kind of attracted, first of all, by the first verse. The first verse they recited was a verse describing Krishna in Vrindavan and specifically his beauty, and really describing his glory in a very beautiful way. So this attracted him. But then the second verse they recited was another famous verse from the Bhagavatam regarding Lord Krishna's mercy, the mercy that he gave to Putana. And, it's saying that, alas, how can I take shelter of one more merciful than he who gave the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, even though she had prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. So here, this second verse, when Shukadev Goswami heard this, that how merciful, how compassionate and loving the Lord is, then his heart was completely transformed, and he came back to hear more about the glories of the Lord and the glories of bhakti specifically. And this is such a beautiful example of the Lord's mercy. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the third glory of the Lord, of Lord Ram, and all forms of the Lord, is the extraordinary pastimes, the glorious pastimes that he performs. So again, another quote from Hanuman, where he says, Astam vananya bhavanam dasanam paramagatihi prabhor vichitra lilaiva prema bhakti vivardhini. Translation: let the wonderfully varied pastimes of the Lord be the very life of his servants who think of nothing but him. For such devotees, those pastimes always increase the ecstasy of love of God. So saying that basically, the Lord's pure devotees, hearing these pastimes, that is their life and soul. And whenever they hear this, every time they hear these pastimes, it increases the ecstasy of their love for the Lord more and more. And they want nothing just to hear again and again about the Lord and his pastimes. And even Lord Chaitanya showed that example for us as well, when he was hearing every day Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit, and he was completely absorbed in ecstasy. And as I'm sure many of you know, that his favorite pastimes to hear from the Bhagavatam were the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. So every time he would hear these pastimes, and Gadadhar Pandit would finish reciting, and then he would say, again, please recite these pastimes again. So he would do it again. And then when he's finished, he would say, again, recite it. And this would just continue on and on. Every time he heard this, he just couldn't get enough of it. And because he's showing the behavior of a pure devotee, so then this is an example for us, or at least something that we can aim for to, get this taste and enthusiasm to hear the pastimes of the Lord. So, okay, so the three glories of Lord Ram, which I mentioned, was his affection, his compassion, and his extraordinary pastimes. So now I want to just speak on the glories of some of Lord Ram's devotees. And the reason why I want to focus on that is, a point that we've all heard, how, the Lord prefers it when glory is given to his devotees more than when it is given to himself. He likes to see a lot more that his devotees are respected and worshipped, even more than him. So here, Prabhupada, in the purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.16, he's making this point. He says, the servants of God come to propagate God consciousness, and intelligent people should cooperate with them in every respect. By serving the servant of God, one can please God more than by directly serving the Lord. The Lord is more pleased when he sees that his servants are properly respected, because such servants risk everything for the service of the Lord, and so are very dear to the Lord. The Lord declares in the Bhagavad Gita 1869 that no one is dearer to him than one who risks everything to preach his glory. By serving the servants of the Lord, one gradually gets the quality of such servants, and thus one becomes qualified to hear the glories of God. So basically, so this is why I thought, especially on this auspicious day, I think we can please Lord Ram even more if we glorify his devotees than if we glorify him. And this point that I mentioned about he likes to give the credit, give the glory to his devotees, you can see that with this example of the bridge, that Lord Ram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can immediately, instantly, without any difficulty, cross over the ocean. But he wanted to give the glory to all his devotees, all his servants, the monkey army, and various other devotees, that they built this bridge to Lanka. And because of that, he was able to cross, even though obviously he can easily do it himself. So yeah, he wanted to give the glory to his devotees in that sense. Okay, so Okay, so the way I wanted to do this is, we all, I'm sure, have heard of the 9 processes of bhakti. So we have Shravanam, which is hearing, and we have Kirtanam, chanting, Smaranam, remembering, we have Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, Archanam, offering worship, Vandanam, offering prayers, Dasyam, becoming the Lord's servant, Sakyam, considering the Lord one's best friend, and Atmanivedanam, surrendering everything to the Lord. So we have these 9 processes of devotional service, and then we also have 9 devotees from the Srimad Bhagavatam who are considered to be the best examples of these 9 processes. So this explanation is actually given, or these examples are given by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but it's also then quoted in the CC, I believe. Obviously, there are many devotees we could think of to represent these, but he gives these 9, as you can see on the table. So for hearing, he gives Parikshit Maharaj, and for chanting, Shukadev Goswami. For Smaranam, it's Prahlad Maharaj. I'm just going to go through these, just list them, because I want to focus more on the devotees from the Ramayana. Prahlad Maharaj for Smaranam, then Lakshmi for Pada Sevanam, Prithu Maharaj for Archanam, Akrura for offering prayers, Hanuman for Dasyam, being the Lord's servant, Arjuna is the Lord's best friend, and Bali Maharaj for Atmanivedanam, because he surrendered everything to the Lord. So those are the 9 devotees given from the Srimad Bhagavatam. But I wanted to, just to make this more interactive as well, there's no specific list in the scriptures for the 9 devotees in the Ramayana, but various devotees have given lists of these. And usually most of the lists are quite similar. There's some differences in the devotees they choose, but generally it's quite similar. Anyway, I decided to go with the devotees that Sutapa Prabhu mentioned in his book Bhagavad, this book that he's written explaining the Bhagavatam. So as I said, I just wanted to make this interactive, so maybe like a bit of a quiz. So I'll just open it out to everyone. Who do we think is the best example for Shravanam, hearing from the Ramayana? So anyone can just unmute and give an answer.
Hare Krishna, Hanumanji.
Hare Krishna. Yes, exactly, Hanumanji. Thank you so much. So I will go through an explanation of all of these, but for now I'm just gonna ask you for these 9 devotees. Yes, Hanuman. And what about Kirtanam, chanting? Who do we think is the best example? Anybody? Okay, I can give a clue. It's kind of similar how Shukadev Goswami, who recited the Bhagavatam, is considered the example for Kirtanam in the Bhagavatam. So,
With Valmiki?
Yes.
Valmiki Muni?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Mataji. Valmiki Muni. Okay, next one. Smaranam, remembrance. Who is the best example?
Sita Mata?
Sita Mata.
Sita Mata.
Yeah, exactly. Sita Devi. Okay, next one. Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Who is the best example in the Ramayana?
Hanuman? No, not Hanuman, Lakshman.
Lakshman.
Yes, someone said Bharat.
Bharat Maharaj.
Exactly, yes. Okay, next one. Archanam, offering worship. Who do you think is the best example?
Hanuman.
So we've already got Hanuman.
Is it Shabari?
Yes.
Shabari.
Shabari,
Shabari.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next one. Vandanam, offering prayers. Who do we think?
Vibhishan Maharaj?
Yes, Vibhishan, yes. As I said, for all of these, there may be different answers. So even for this one, there's also, you could give the example of, there's the example of the sages of Dandakaranya, the Dandaka forest. There's these sages performing sacrifice, and they're offering very beautiful prayers to the Lord, to Lord Ram. And while they're offering these beautiful prayers, they also have a desire in their heart to have a even more intimate relationship with the Lord, which they're not able to have in their relationship with Lord Ram. So because they please the Lord, they conquer the Lord's heart by their prayers, then the Lord fulfilled their desire. And in their next, when the Lord appeared in his original form of Krishna, then those sages appeared as gopis. There's various groups of gopis. So one group of those gopis were actually previously the sages of the Dandaka forest. So they also could be given as example. And I did see one list from another devotee where they gave the sages as that example. But yeah, so for this list, we have Vibhishan. Okay, so Dasyam, being the servant, who do we think?
Lakshmana? Is it Lakshmana?
Yes, thank you, Mataji, Lakshman. Okay, and Sakyam, the Lord's best friend, who do we think that is in the Ramayana?
Vibhishan.
Lakshmana?
So it can't be someone we mentioned already. It's one of the monkeys.
Sugriv?
Yes. Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you.
Sugriv. And finally, Atmanivedanam. So who's the example of giving everything to Lord Ram?
Sita Mata.
No, we have Sita already. So, okay, to give a clue, this devotee gave his life.
Maharaja Dashrath?
Jatayu.
Jatayu.
Yes, Jatayu. Yes,
Jatayu.
exactly. Thank you. So as I said, you could have different devotees in mind, but I decided to go with Sutapa Prabhu's examples. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain all of these 9 devotees. So this is why Hanuman is given as the example for Shravanam, and it's that wherever there's Ram Katha taking place, Hanuman is present. He delights in hearing the glories of his beloved Lord Ram and attain complete perfection by hearing the Lord's wonderful pastimes. We also see that he is always engaged in following the instructions of Lord Ram. So this is a point I'm sure we've all heard, that wherever the glorification of Lord Ram is taking place, then Hanuman immediately appears there. He's hearing. And it says here, the last sentence as well, that basically he's not just hearing the pastimes and relishing these pastimes, but he's also hearing the instructions of Lord Ram. And naturally, if you're hearing the instructions, then the next thing is to follow those instructions. So in that way, Hanuman is given as the best example for hearing. And yeah, so I just wanted to give a bit more on this glorification of Hanuman. So this is again from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So mainly I was mentioning at the beginning from the second part, but this is from the first part of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So again, just to give a quick background, the first part is basically Narad Muni he's basically on a quest. He's on a journey to find who is the greatest recipient of the Lord's mercy, or who received the most mercy from the Lord, which devotee. So he goes from one devotee to another saying, oh, it seems that you have received the greatest mercy. from the Lord, and then that devotee says, no, I haven't received anything. If you want to see someone who's really received the greatest mercy, go to this devotee. And then each devotee sends him to another devotee. And then in the 4th chapter, Narad Muni comes to Hanuman. He's been directed to find Hanuman. And then he approaches Hanuman and he's glorifying Hanuman. And he mentions these. This is 3 verses. So he says, having surrendered yourself entirely to the Lord, having received his highest mercy, having dedicated your life to topics of his transcendental glories, you always increase the bliss of the devotee sheltered by him. You are the best of saints, greater even than others like Garuda. So here this is Narad Muni, who's considered one of the greatest of saints, but he's saying, no, Hanuman is the best of saints. Then he goes on to say, indeed, your devotion for the Lord is absolutely pure, for you consider nothing more valuable than the pleasure of serving him. You delighted all his devotees by speaking to that best of generous lords these words. So then Narad Muni is quoting something that Hanuman spoke in the Ramayana. Hanuman says, Bhava bandha chide tasyai sprihayami namuktaya bhavan prabhu raham dasa iti yatra vilupyate. Even though liberation destroys the bondage of material existence, I have no desire for liberation in which I would forget that you are the master and I am your servant. So here, is really showing the glory and the devotion of Hanuman, that he has no interest in simply being liberated from material existence. He has no desire for such liberation where you have that kind of impersonal oneness. He has no interest in that, because then he will forget, he won't be in that relationship of the servant and the master. So therefore he has no interest. If he cannot be the Lord's servant, then he has no attraction for that. So, this really shows as well that this is, just as I mentioned at the beginning, everyone has their specific relationship with the Lord, and this really shows how fixed Hanuman is in his servant-master relationship with the Lord. And, like whatever relationship, if we're in our constitutional relationship, then we'll feel fully satisfied. We won't think, for example, I'm a coward boy, but I want to be, a gopi, or I'm a cow and I want to be a coward boy, or something like that. We never feel like that. There's no dissatisfaction. We'll feel perfectly satisfied. And being in it, one of the other relationships, we would just not feel natural. We wouldn't feel comfortable, because that's not our constitutional position. So, for example, Hanuman would definitely not feel comfortable acting on an equal level with the Lord, like a coward boy playing with the Lord, and like that, he would never even consider such a thing. So Hanuman, is such a, as we all know, such an incredible devotee here. So I just wanted to give this glorification of Hanuman. And Hanuman, of course, is also known as an incarnation, ultimately, of Lord Shiva, who is considered the best of Vaishnavas. The greatest Vaishnava is Shiva. So then it makes sense that within Ram Lila, Hanuman is considered. That's Hanuman. Then Valmiki Muni for Kirtanam. So Valmiki Muni perfected his life by writing the Ramayana, in which he has described and glorified the pastimes of Lord Ram and Sita Devi. He received a boon from Lord Brahma that allowed him to know all the minute details of Lord Ram's pastimes. The Ramayana is the only book that Valmiki wrote, and by doing so, he attained eternal glory in the eternal mercy of the Lord. So, that's pretty self-explanatory how this is Kirtanam. Kirtanam is literally translated as glorification. So obviously he's completely, that is all, Ramayana is simply glorification of the Lord. So just simply by doing that, he attained perfection. So he is the example given, but you could also give the example of Lava and Kush, the sons of Lord Ram, because after hearing the Ramayana from Valmiki Muni, then they were constantly engaged in chanting the Ramayana. So they are also given sometimes as the example for Kirtana. Next, as we mentioned, Sita Devi is the example for Smaranam. Being the eternal consort of Lord Ram, Sita Devi was completely absorbed in remembrance of him at all times. For this reason, when she entered into fire, she confidently said, "If even for a moment I have thought of anyone else other than Lord Ram, then let me burn to ashes." And we know, of course, that, as I said, obviously she's the eternal consort of the Lord. So obviously she is at all times constantly just thinking of Lord Ram and nothing else. And then obviously this pastime about the fire, then we do understand, as it's explained in the CC, that actually Ravan was given an illusory form of Sita, Maya Sita, and never actually put his hands. It's not possible for someone on the material platform to even touch someone on the spiritual platform, let alone carry them away, abduct them. But for the pastimes, he was given an illusory form of Sita, which he took away. So then, when this Maya Sita entered into the fire, and then afterwards the original Sita returned. And so it was only this illusory form of Sita which was burned in the fire, and then the original Sita came from that fire. Okay, so then we have, next we have Bharat for Pada Sevanam. So during the 14 years that Lord Ram was absent from Ayodhya, his brother Bharat governed the kingdom as his representative. Refusing to accept any royal comforts, he placed Lord Ram's sandals at the foot of the throne, never once sat upon it himself. Due to his mother's actions, many people believed that Bharat had conspired to seize the throne. But he never wavered from his service despite carrying this heavy burden of misunderstanding. Bharat's reign was righteous and the kingdom was safe and prosperous, but he always longed for his brother's return. So this is a very important point that I wanted to focus on. Very inspiring for us as practicing devotees, where all these difficulties that he went through, but he still continued in his service. He still continued serving even the people who suspected him. When this whole thing happened, that KK asked for these boons from Maharaj Dashrath, for Bharat to be installed on the throne and for Lord Ram to be exiled. Bharat wasn't even there. He was away. He was away from Ayodhya. But at this time, when this happened, everyone, the people of the kingdom, they suspected, they thought, Bharat is a conspirator. So the people of the kingdom, they didn't, they suspected him. Then even Maharaj Dashrath himself, it's actually described that when Bharat returned, Dashrath had already left his body. So Bharat never got a chance to explain to his father that actually I had nothing to do with this. So Maharaj Dashrath, he basically, he thought that Bharat wanted to actually do this. He wanted to steal the throne from Ram. and he kind of almost disowned Bharat. He said that, this so-called son of mine, Bharat, he can have no part in my, my funeral ceremony and all of that. He should have nothing to do with that. And he basically left his body. Maharaj Dashrath died thinking that Bharat was a conspirator, that Bharat had tried to steal the throne. And Bharat came back, and his father had already left his body, so he couldn't explain himself to his father. But still, he didn't become depressed. Still he continued in his service happily. And Lakshman also suspected Bharat. When Bharat came to the forest asking Lord Ram to come back. He didn't want the throne. All he wanted was for his brother to come back. So when he was coming, as Chandramauli Maharaj mentioned in his class today, Lakshman thought Bharat was coming to attack and get rid of Ram once and for all. So he was, got his bow and he was ready to attack Bharat to defend Lord Ram. And then Lord Ram said, no, this is not why Bharat is coming. Put your weapons down. So then, obviously Lord Ram said, no, I must. This was the final word of my father, so I cannot come back until after the 14 years. So then Bharat returned, but he didn't, as I said, he didn't take any royal comforts. He never sat on the throne. He didn't live in the palace. He lived outside. As Maharaj mentioned today in his class, he lived in a place called Nandigram. Basically, he was living in the wilderness. And from there, he was governing Ayodhya on Lord Ram's behalf. So many people suspected and misunderstood Bharat, but he continued despite this burden of misunderstanding. I just wanted to mention that. And then for Archanam, for worship, we have Shabari. So obviously making offerings to the Lord to become prasadam, that is part of worship. That's part of deity worship is offering. So Shabari, she worshipped Lord Ram by offering half-eaten berries to him with great love, having tasted them to make sure they were acceptable to be offered. The Lord was so pleased with her loving service that he happily ate the berries. Her great devotion, purity, humility, and sincerity conquered Lord Ram's heart, and thus she perfected her life. So this is, this is not something obviously we can imitate. She could do this because she was a pure devotee. She is a pure devotee. Obviously, generally for us, we don't taste the offerings before we offer them to the Lord. But Shabari, out of her pure love, her ecstatic love, she simply couldn't allow Lord Ram to have berries that were tasted sour or whatever, they didn't taste nice. So she simply had to check beforehand that they're suitable for Ram. And so it's not that she was, or oh no, she's not following the rules and regulations, what is she doing? No, it's not like that, because she's a pure devotee. And Lord Ram is not seeing the external forms of it, but he's seeing the love, the devotion by which she offered it. So then he happily ate the remnants of his own devotee. So very powerful example there. And then we have Vandanam. Vibhishan is given as the example. So despite being born in the same family as Ravan, Vibhishan was a great devotee and therefore advised his demoniac brother to give up his foolish plans and return Sita Devi to Lord Ram. When Ravan refused to see reason, Vibhishan left the kingdom of Lanka to join the Lord. After approaching Lord Ram, he offered very heartfelt prayers that touched his heart. So as I mentioned earlier, when I gave that verse that Lord Ram, that statement of Lord Ram where he said, that he'll accept anyone who's only once surrendered unto him. So this was after, as I mentioned, this was after Vibhishan came. So, generally, when we're offering prayers, our prayers are more sincere, they're more intense, generally, when we're going through difficult situations in our lives. I'm sure we've all experienced that. That when things are going really well, sometimes we don't even think of the Lord that much, or we don't really pray to him so much, or if we do, maybe not with the same intensity and eagerness. But then all of a sudden, when things seem to go really bad, then all of a sudden we remember the Lord again, and we offer such heartfelt, intense prayers. So similarly, it was at this time where Vibhishan was going through such a difficult situation that he offered such incredibly heartfelt and intense prayers that he touched the Lord's heart. Because, he had given up everything. He had left everything behind. He had left his home, his family, simply to surrender to Lord Ram. So that, he had nowhere else to go. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the devotees of Lord Ram, they suspected Vibhishan. So basically, when Vibhishan came, Lord Ram had a meeting with his advisors, and he asked them for their opinions. And also here, setting the example of a great leader who asks for the opinion of his advisors before he makes the decision. And so, some devotees said, no, we can't trust. Vibhishan came with a few of his servants. So they said, we can't trust them at all. Just kill them all straight away. Some of them said, let's capture them and imprison them. Some of them said, let's spy on them just to get intelligence, to get information, so that can help us defeat Ravan. So anyway, various devotees gave their opinions, and then Lord Ram finally, the last devotee he asked was Hanuman. Hanuman basically said that no, we should trust him. We should welcome him with open arms. He has left his brother. He's left everything, and he's come to us willingly. And if we do not accept him, then where will he go? He has nowhere else. And furthermore, Hanuman said that, when Hanuman went to find Sita, he saw and he observed Vibhishan. And so Hanuman is saying, I've seen Vibhishan, I've seen how he acts, how he behaves, I've seen his character, I've seen how he speaks. And I know that we have nothing to worry, we have nothing to fear about him. He is a devotee of yours, and we should accept him. We should, welcome him with open arms. So then Lord Ram is hearing all these various opinions, and then finally he gives his decision, and he says, yes, I will accept them. And then, as I said earlier, he said, even if Ravan himself comes and surrenders, then I will accept him as well. So he made that vow. So then, Dasyam, we have Lakshman. So Lakshman is the perfect servant of Lord Ram. He is described as the Lord's shadow, for he never left his side for even a moment, not even to sleep. He was constantly engaged in serving Lord Ram and Sita Devi throughout his life. He was given many thankless tasks, but he carried them out because he was completely dedicated to following the Lord's instructions. So, this is another very powerful point, that you're such an incredible servant that he didn't even stop to sleep. He's just constantly 24 hours engaged in service. And again, this is the example of a pure devotee which we cannot imitate and not sleep at all. That's very difficult for us, obviously, but it's a powerful example to inspire us, that just like it's explained, because it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna is on that spiritual platform, he's a pure devotee, then he's referred to in one verse as Gudakesh, the one who has conquered over sleep. So similarly, we can say the same thing for Lakshman, that he's so fixed in his service that he's transcended the needs of his material body, and therefore he doesn't even need to sleep. And this point about he is described as the Lord's shadow, the shadow is, obviously just goes wherever the person goes. So, Lakshman considered Lord Ram his life and soul. So if he saw Lord Ram going here, and he says, oh, my life, my soul is going there, I must follow. Or he sees Lord Ram doing this and says, oh, I must go and serve Ram like that. So wherever he would go, Lakshman would follow. And sometimes because of this, he was even suspected by others of having ill motives. But still, he carried on. He carried on with his, as it says here, his dedication to following the Lord's instructions. Next one is Sugriv, who is the example for Sakyam. So I don't have such a big explanation here, but Sugriv perfected his life simply by becoming the best friend of Lord Ram. And Hanuman once asked that Lord Ram, that why is that Sugriv is your best friend? Why is it that you form this friendship with Sugriv? And what can you get from this relationship? And then Lord Ram is basically saying that, before Sugriv, he didn't really have any friends. Even his, he didn't really have a good, well, obviously we know he didn't have a good relationship with his brother, Vali, and, he didn't really have friends. So for that reason, Lord Ram became his best friend. For those who don't have friends, then Lord Ram is the friend. So for this reason, Lord Ram explains that he became the best friend of Sugriv. And then simply by having this friendship with Lord Ram, then Sugriv achieved perfection. So I know it's coming up to 9 o'clock, so let's move on to the last one. And I wanted to speak a bit more about this one, because obviously this is Atma Nivedanam, this is surrendering everything that we have to the Lord. So obviously Jatayu, he surrendered his life. Jatayu gave his life trying to protect Sita Devi from Ravan. When Lord Ram was searching for Sita, he found Jatayu almost dead, and was informed by Jatayu that Sita had been carried off by Ravan. After Jatayu died in his arms, the Lord carried out the duty of a son by performing the funeral ceremony. Both Sita Devi and Lord Ram were extremely grateful to Jatayu for his selfless sacrifice. So first of all, just this point that, when Lord Ram finds Jatayu dying there, and then Jatayu is he's speaking and relating to Lord Ram as if Lord Ram is his son. He's speaking like a father. And then afterwards, because of that, Lord Ram himself felt duty bound to act as a son and perform the funeral ceremony for Jatayu. And just wanted to mention this last point about how grateful Lord Ram and Sita Devi were to Jatayu for his sacrifice. That is described, I heard in a class by Vraj Bihari Prabhu from Chowpatty, Mumbai temple, that, so there's a pastime. So this is happening after Ravan has been defeated, but before they return to Ayodhya. They have the coronation ceremony where Lord Ram is installing Vibhishan on the throne of Lanka. So then Lord Ram is there, and he's actually doing it himself. So he's got the crown in his hand, and he's just about to crown Vibhishan. And while he's doing that, tears are falling from his eyes. And then just before he places the crown on Vibhishan's head, he stops and he's really crying. And he turns to Lakshman and he says, "My dear Lakshman, I gave the kingdom of Ayodhya to Bharat. I gave the kingdom of Kishkinda to Sugriv. And now I am giving the kingdom of Lanka to Vibhishan. But I did not give anything to Jatayu." And he was just remembering Jatayu, and out of his extreme gratitude, he was just crying and crying. So this is how much he touched the heart of the Supreme Lord. And then later in Ayodhya, it's the coronation of Lord Ram. And so again, it's a very joyous occasion, and the people of Ayodhya are all celebrating. On the streets, there is singing and dancing and so much joy. And, everyone is throwing flower petals on the Lord. And, they're throwing red rose petals. And then Mother Sita Devi is seeing this. She's seeing these red petals falling down. And then she starts crying and crying profusely. And then Lord Ram turns to her and says, "My dear Sita, this is such a joyful occasion. Why are you crying?" And then she says, "Seeing these red petals falling from the sky, I am reminded of Jatayu." Because when Jatayu was trying to fight off Ravan, Ravan is attacking him with arrows and with his sword. And Jatayu becomes very hurt. And, Sita Devi is seeing Jatayu falling from the sky, and she's seeing the red blood falling down from the sky. So then now seeing these red petals reminds her of Jatayu, and then she cannot stop crying due to her incredible gratitude to Jatayu for his selfless sacrifice. So, such an incredibly powerful pastime there. And I think, at least for me personally, for that reason, I say out of these 9 devotees, Jatayu is my favorite devotee. And, how really just incredible how he gave everything, literally everything. He gave his life for the Lord. So those are the 9 examples from the Ramayana of the 9 processes of bhakti. So that is the presentation I had. But does anyone have any questions or any points you would like to add? Any reflections or anything you'd like to say? Please do.
Prabhuji, what a wonderful class you presented. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Nikhil Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Lord. It was such a wonderful, and actually the heart felt very peaceful, actually, because today is the Ramanavami. And because of that, I think we should feel very, very much towards our, humbleness towards Lord Ram. So by giving this class, he really has, given us that feeling. Also have a little question, we don't know what's our relationship with the Lord. And does that mean that devotees would all the people, or all the devotees who are with Lord Ram in Ajidha, would they ever go to Golok Vrindavan? Will that change? I just wanted to know, because Gokumara, how he travels from one to the other, but he came to Vaikuntha, then he started calling, he sing Narayan, and but then eventually he was taken up. So is that in the devotees' pure stages, do they also have to go through that way, or how does it work? Sorry.
No, thank you so much for that. It's a very nice question. So first of all, just the first part with regard to Lord Ram's devotees. As I mentioned before, that they are situated in the perfect relationship for them with the Lord. So generally, I wouldn't think that they would, all of a sudden one day think, oh, I would like to go to Goloka Vrindavan. I would actually like to now have an intimate relationship with Krishna. It's not likely to happen. Obviously, technically, theoretically, it is possible. There's nothing stopping, someone from even going above Vaikuntha and going to Goloka Vrindavan. But generally, unless it's some kind of special exception, they would never feel any dissatisfaction that, oh, I would like to go to Goloka Vrindavan because I'm not fully satisfied here. And for the example of Gopa Kumar in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, for him, his constitutional position was a coward boy in Goloka Vrindavan. So that's why even when he went to Vaikuntha, he was not, obviously he still felt extremely satisfied, but not completely perfectly, because he was not able to relate, as you mentioned, he's not able to relate with Lord Narayan, with Lord Vishnu in the very intimate way that he really would like to. So for that reason, he continued his journey, but he kind of, he had this, he did this journey through all the planets in the material world, going through all the higher planets, and then Vaikuntha, and then, continue like that. He did this whole journey because he was able to do this because he was given this special mantra from his spiritual master. And through that, he was able to take this journey. But for us, I'm not too sure whether we would have to go through that whole process as well. I mean, obviously, as we understand from Bhagavad Gita, if we are absorbed in Krishna at the time of death, then we go straight to Krishna, which means going to Krishna means going to Goloka Vrindavan. So then we wouldn't have to, you wouldn't be doing that same journey that Gopa Kumar had. But at the same time, I have heard some devotees say that when you leave from here and you go up to the spiritual world, go to Goloka Vrindavan, you kind of go all the way up. So then you do see all these different places. So I've heard other devotees mention that as well, that we do see all the higher and higher destinations while we're going up. But yeah, I don't know, maybe a more senior, more knowledgeable devotee could explain more about that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Because normally the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we are getting kind of the whole knowledge for us who have taken the shelter in Gaudiya Vaishnava. It's our goal is Golok Vrindavan. I don't know whether I will ever go there, but it is our knowledge. This is the way we are receiving the knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is the special mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that we've been given. He's given us access to something that we wouldn't have been able to have access to before. And so for that reason, we kind of generally Gaudiya Vaishnavas aspire for Goloka Vrindavan, but obviously anywhere in the spiritual world is perfect. And at least for me speaking personally, for someone who's still kind of very much materially conditioned, still here with so many material desires, it feels a bit, I can't really, beggars can't be choosers, when we're in this position, we can't think, oh, I like to be this, I like to be that, just getting to the spiritual world would be incredible.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Anybody else would like to share anything? Or
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
So Jatayu, when he was lying on the ground near death, Then Lord Ram asked him, Jatayu, you know you are very old, 60,000 years old. Did you think that you would be able to conquer Ravan and save Sita? Then Jatayu said, no, my lord. I knew I would not be able to defeat Ravana, but my goal was just to delay the process of Ravana taking Sita away. Because of one Muhurata, which is 42 minutes, if I can stop Ravana for that one Muhurata, then after that, the Muhurta that will come, if Ravana takes Sita, you're sure that Sita will come back. In that Muhurta, whoever lose something, they'll get it back. But in this present Muhurta where I was stopping Ravana, in this Muhurta, if somebody lose something, they don't get it back. So he told Lord Ram not to worry, you will get Sita back. That was his main purpose of fighting, because he knew he would not be able to defeat this Ravana, right? So this is, and also going back to Lord Ram Dham, which is Saket Dham, it depends on your devotion towards the Lord. Like we pray to Krishna, we aim for Golok Vrindavan. We don't go directly to Golok Vrindavan. Nobody goes directly to Golok Vrindavan. It's just like when we get a job, we get training, right?
Yes.
So we are living this material world, we are going. Do we have the training to how to behave in Golok Vrindavan? No, we are sent in some Vaikuntha Loka where we get the training of how to live our life in, how to serve the Lord, how to serve Lord Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. It's not easy, it's very difficult, but if we aspire, if we do the right thing, Krishna may see our endeavor. And actually devotees, few devotees, they don't aspire to go to Golok Vrindavan. They tell Krishna, wherever I am, even in hell, give me service. That is the attitude of few devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wow, thank you so much for sharing those points, Mataji. It's very informative for me as well.
Hare Krishna.
And yeah, what you mentioned about Jatayu, that makes it even more incredible that he knew he was not going to survive, but still he did it. And obviously he was very elderly, but if Jatayu in his prime, he would have been able to easily defeat Ravan. It's described that Jatayu was very, very powerful. But yeah, obviously at that time he was very elderly. Thank you, Mataji. Anything else for anyone before we finish?
Prabhuji, you have some nice comments in the chat box.
Oh, okay.
And also there's a question as well.
What's the question?
Someone said iPhone has asked this question. Excellent presentation. Maybe you can do a similar presentation for characters from the Mahabharata at some point.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, maybe. I don't have any knowledge about, or I don't have so much knowledge about Mahabharata compared to this. But yeah, maybe one devotee would be able to do that. I don't personally feel qualified about Mahabharata specifically. But yeah, it's definitely something to look into. Thank you for that comment. Anything else? Okay, if that's all, then Hare Krishna, we'll finish here. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming and listening to this class. And yeah, it was a real pleasure to be able to speak and glorify about these devotees of Lord Ram. I'm sure you can all agree, such incredible examples of selfless devotion. So yeah, Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo ananta koti Vaishnavrinda ki
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna, everybody. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Amazing. Thank you. Hare Krishna.